Hey everybody, my name's Todd Ohlmeyer and I run a business that is partnered with the Texas Junior Golf Tour. We were going to try to do a presentation this week, but just so many players and not a lot of time, so we figured putting together a little video outlining some of the kind of hot button topics that are going on with college recruiting right now. And so put together this short video for you to review, and please feel free to contact me at any time. You can see my contact information there. As part of the Texas Junior Golf Tour, you do get a free 30-minute phone consultation with me to talk about your situation, and hopefully I can answer some basic questions. So I'm going to go into this presentation here, try to fly through it relatively quick. Normally I'd like to have kind of a Q&A session, but obviously that can't happen with a video recording like this. So hopefully this answers some questions you have and maybe opens up some ideas or thoughts to more questions to come. So thank you for taking part in watching this video, and I look forward to speaking with you, and good luck this week at Horseshoe Bay. I will be out there all day on Sunday. I'll have a tent set up next to the scoring area. So if you got any questions after the round, hunt me down out there. If I'm not at the table, shoot me a text, and then I'll try to make my way back. I know I will go out on the golf course and spend some time watching some clients play, but please feel free to reach out if you got any questions this weekend. I'll be out there all day Sunday. All right, so let's get started on the presentation. There we go. Sorry, it took a second to get it going. So yeah, there are lots of opportunities out there. These numbers actually do fluctuate from year to year as schools add and remove golf programs, but historically this is about the number of teams that there's been. And if you look at an average roster size of somewhere between 9 and 12 for the men and 7 or 8 for the women, this is what you get from a roster size standpoint. So lots of players out there, but it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a ton when you think about the number of junior golfers there are. And this is what I'm going to kind of talk about too, is there are a lot of opportunities, but they're becoming a little bit more limited because of the popularity of golf. There's a huge spike due to COVID. And we're seeing that right now, especially where, in these little charts here, we've got the graduating class, the number of eligible seniors according to Junior Golf Scoreboard, and the number of student athletes that signed with a college for that respective year. Now that signed number is can be a little skewed because it is relying on families and players reporting their signing to Junior Golf Scoreboard. So please do that, so that helps people figure out what's the right fit, and also just knowing how things are going. So a couple things that I think are pretty interesting here is just seeing the explosion in golf, and primarily I would say because of COVID, but then you're also seeing a reduction in the number of players that are signing. And two reasons for that, and I'm hoping and expecting that number to start to creep back up. One is because of COVID, all student athletes received an extra year of eligibility. So, that's really had an adverse effect on incoming students the last few years, and we got another year of that left, another 2 years of that left. But there's also the transfer portal, and so that's made it easier for players to transfer. And with that, coaches can decide, do I want to bring in an unknown commodity in a high schooler, or should I take on a transfer who's maybe had some playing time as a freshman or even a sophomore and could know what they actually have. And so, in the transfer portal right now, there was about 500 male golfers, with 325 of them being Division I players, and on the female side it was 312 with over 200 being D1 players. And so, the challenge with that is, is that, there's a lot of kids that are looking to leave. Now, what happens is, and I think you really need to make sure before entering the transfer portal is, are you willing and ready to possibly give up your spot? Because sometimes a coach might say, hey, you're wanting to transfer, we are moving on from you, and you lose the opportunity. So are you really willing to enter the portal knowing that you may lose your current spot? So just, whether it's you're thinking about it or talking with someone about it, definitely keep that in mind. Some quick recruiting timeline things to think about. Once you enter your freshman year, you become a prospective student athlete. I recommend, emailing coaches every 2 or 3 months with updates. We'll go into some of the more of that stuff a little bit later. But I think it's also important to make sure that you are staying in contact with your guidance counselor at your high school, and making sure that they know you want to try to play college athletics, and that you're going to need to make sure you complete the NCAA core class requirements. You can go on unofficial visits at any time, but not until August 1st, prior to your junior year, can you actually meet with anyone from the athletic department. So that means coaches or anybody that works in the athletic office. You can't meet with them until after August 1st of your junior year. When it comes to junior year, June 15th, the summer between your sophomore year and junior year, coaches can reach out to you, phone calls, text, email. And with that, there used to be a limitation on the number of calls that a coach could make per week, but there is no limitation on any of that now. So June 15th is when you can start calling, or coaches can start calling you. In the past, also, you may have heard this, where the student athlete could call the coach, and if the coach answers, they can talk. That's no longer the case. It's just June 15th of between sophomore and junior year can you start talking to a coach. August 1st of your junior year, you can start to make visits, and the coach can have contact with you in person off campus. Again, staying on top of things with your guidance counselor. Start taking some SAT or ACT prep classes. Recommend taking it at least twice, once in the the spring of your junior year, and then again in the fall. And again, you can start making visits. You are allowed to make 5 official visits to D1 schools. D2 and D lower division schools, you can make multiple, as many as you'd like. I will say that all those visits, that comes out of their budget, and so a lot of schools, they may not even offer official visits. So just keep that in mind. And you can only take 1 official visit per school. So if you are a 2-sport star and thinking about not sure which sport to play, like, you can't take 1 visit for football and then take another visit for golf. Like, you can only take 1 official visit per school. Senior year, just the the contact should be more frequent. I would say at that point, if you haven't signed or verbally committed, like, you're after each event, letting a coach know that what's going on. And so keeping the coach constantly up to date with what's going on with your academics and your athletics is really important. You will be able to sign a national letter of intent starting in mid-November, and that runs up until school starts of your senior year. If you do go to a Division III school, they don't have scholarships, but you could ask the coach to provide like a commitment letter so that you have something to sign on your school signing day. One of the most important things that people sometimes fail to remember, just because you have an agreement to go to the school and have signed a national letter of intent, that doesn't mean you don't have to apply. Like, you still have to go through the application process, submit the applications. It's all separate. So for Division III, that recruiting can start at any point and during their high school career, and off-campus contact can begin after your sophomore year. I think a real thing to highlight is, if you are thinking of a Division III school, the time that a coach has the most influence on maybe admissions if you're a borderline student to get into that school, because the D3 schools, they generally have some really strict or strong academic requirements. And so the time that the coach has the most influence is during that early decision. So if you're very serious about that school, I would recommend being in contact with the coach early and let them know that you're willing to apply early decision, provided that you really want to go to that school. So touch on this a little bit more later too, but there's kind of 3 different pods that I think about during the recruiting process, and that's targeting schools, the events that you play in, and the exposure, and then the recruiting process itself, which would be like communications with the coach. So I really recommend that you start wide and start broad with your subjects or with your schools. If you're just a student, it's very easy. I won't say easy, but it's pretty easy to figure out where you fit, because you have your GPA, your class rank, and other things that the school might be looking at, and you can kind of check those boxes off and apply and have a pretty good idea whether you're going to get in or not. When you add the variable of golf, it just makes it a little bit more difficult, because not only do you have all those boxes, but you also have the your golf information. And just because you have a scoring average and the rank that a school is looking for doesn't necessarily mean that it's a sure thing, because a school may have roster limitations, or they might already be done with their recruiting for the year. And so I really recommend starting with a pretty big and wide list, sometimes up to 40 to 60 schools, and then kind of as you're communicating, you kind of pare that list down based on what kind of feedback you're getting from schools. And I think it's really important to make sure that we're having it's okay to have some reach schools, but to really load up more on the target and the safety schools, because it's a competitive world out there for those programs. From a scholarship perspective, NCAA and NAIA schools offer scholarships. Here are the numbers. Just because D1 permits 4.5 scholarships or 3.6 on the men's side does not mean that the school actually gives out that many scholarships. So not every school is what they call fully funded. And so I think it's important to think about that, or just at least know that maybe the school has a limited budget when it comes to scholarship. And this is not football or basketball. And so there's not full scholarships being tossed about. You just look at the pure number standpoint. If you got a roster of 12 golfers and 4.5 scholarships, there's just not that much money to go around. And so I think it's important to know that, the scholarship numbers are going to be smaller, and hoping that you can pair some of that scholarship money with some academic money, can really help. And just because you go in at a X number of dollars for a scholarship doesn't mean that you can't play well and increase your scholarship through time. And that, again, depends on the coach and the program. So again, like I said, the 3 steps in the recruiting process: the target schools, kind of setting your academic and athletic goals for the top schools, events and exposure, compete often and play in the best events that you can get in, and the recruiting process, build relationships as best you can and be persistent. Something that I always say is that if somebody, and I've said it when I was coaching and I say it now and doing what I'm doing now, if somebody wants to play college golf, there's an opportunity out there. It's just a matter of finding it. And you might not be carrying the bag you dreamed of, and maybe it's not in the climate that you want, but there are opportunities out there. And it's just, you have to weigh, like, how important is playing college golf to me? Do I really need it and want it? Or is it just something that I think would be really cool to do? And so sometimes you have to weigh, like, here are my college golf opportunities versus here's what I'm looking for in a college. And so in my college experience. And so, it's okay if you decide, hey, I I don't like the options that I have, and I'm just going to go be a student somewhere. And I'll dive into some other things to think about if that's the route you decide to go on. Regardless, if you decide to play somewhere, it's a life-changing opportunity. This is something that I see on social media every once in a while, but whether it's a D1 school or junior college or wherever, like, this is a life-changing opportunity to play college golf. It's an amazing experience to get to travel around the country and play in golf tournaments and compete. You get to practice and play golf all year round if you love it. Like, it's just a great experience. Where to compete? Obviously, there's just all sorts of opportunities out there, and so where to compete? There's so many different places for, especially here in Texas, to play. But the Texas Junior Golf Tour, Rocky Mountain Junior Tour, the other regional and state tours provide excellent opportunities. And some of those events or tours host qualifiers for some bigger events. And so obviously it's great to play in some AJGA and try to qualify for those bigger events. But honestly, the most important thing is to try to play and participate in as many events as you can. Obviously, as many events that make sense to play in from a family budget perspective and a time perspective. But coaches are looking to see how often and how much you want to compete. And if you're posting good scores, it doesn't necessarily matter that much to a coach. They want to just see that you love competing and you love playing and seeing you participate in events. So just anywhere and as often as possible. Now, how often is that? During school year, you've got school, so you've got a lot of your time taken up by that. You have your high school events. So if you can squeeze in 1 or 2 events per month, that'd be excellent. And then in the summer, trying to get 2 to 4 events per month. But again, like I said, things to consider and I think are very legitimate is the budget and the amount of time it takes for mom or dad to take off work possibly and travel with you. And and then also just getting into events can be quite a challenge right now with the boom and the popularity of golf. Another opportunity to think about, or you'll be hearing about, is elite camps. And these are camps that are set up by coaches as a way to showcase their program and their facilities without having the ability to have some unofficial visits for some younger players. And so definitely something to consider. I think it's important to make sure that you're a legitimate contender for a spot on that roster. But it's also just a great experience regardless, where you get to spend some time with a coach and ask them some questions and get their opinions, because every coach will answer questions differently because they all have different opinions and ways of going about it. So it's always good to get kind of a wide variety of answers to the same questions. Another thing that I would think about doing, especially if you're kind of in the middle school or early on in high school, is checking out the summer camps. It's an outstanding opportunity to get on a coach's radar, get to see what it's like to practice at their facility, get to meet and interact with some of the older players on the team, and just get to see what it's like to be a college golfer. So, and it's fun. Like, you grab a buddy or two and go spend, sleepaway camp for a few nights with a friend. There's nothing better than that. So, definitely something worth looking into. Most of them too, just side note, like, it's a lot of golf, but there are some fun things to do outside of golf. So maybe you're super serious, but your best friend is, a little bit into golf. Like, it's still a great opportunity and experience because there's, pool time and other games that they play aren't golf related to at most camps. Okay, with your resume, like, don't worry about the length. Like you're gonna have basically everything online, so it doesn't really matter necessarily that how long it is. I think it's important to include all your multi-round events for the year. And lastly, I think it's super important for every email that you send out, you should include your cell number, your resume, obviously your year, a swing video, and your tournament schedule. And with the tournament schedule and the resume, have those be like a Google document, a live document, so that, or Google Sheets, where you can constantly update it so that a coach is always seeing the most recent and up-to-date information. If you're sending just an attachment, you're emailing back and forth, and all of a sudden the coach is like, oh, I don't have his resume, and I'm going to go and look at a resume and from the first email. Well, that was 6 months ago, and that information is no longer that relevant. So I highly recommend placing or making stuff as a Google document or Google Sheets. With making your swing video, it doesn't need to be very long. It doesn't have to have flying graphics and animation and music. Let the audio of the contact be on that swing video. Some coaches love swing videos. Some don't even really look at them. So it just kind of depends from coach to coach and program to program. Like I mentioned earlier, each coach is going to answer questions differently based on their personal preference. But what they would see or want to see if they're doing a swing video is a face on, which is when the camera is out in front of you, or in a down the line view where it's going along your target line. And having it for a few different shots. So driver, 6 or 7 iron, wedge, maybe hit a few chips and bunker shots and putts, but just give the coach an idea of what your golf swing looks like and what you look like physically, so that they have an idea and they can get gauge your speed. So it's really just an opportunity for the coach to get a little bit of a look at who you are as a player, and then more than likely they're going to want to come out and watch you play in person. From an email, etiquette, just make sure you're trying to personalize as often as you can. Subject lines, really try to talk about what you have in this email, and really try to grab the coach's attention, because you're only going to have sometimes 15 to 30 seconds for the coach to quickly look at his phone while he's out doing something on the course. Maybe he's got downtime during practice or before practice, and he's just going to look at his phone while he's at qualifying for his team for a tournament. So really check through that. Use Grammarly.com. It's a great little app that you can use to make sure, or give you some options to look at from a grammar perspective. Talked about this earlier, kind of just a general timeline for how things are going from communicating to coaches. As you get closer and closer, you'll need to do more and more, and you'll kind of get a sense of it too from how your communication is going with coaches. Know that they get a lot of emails and they get a lot of direct messages through social media, and so they may, they want to try to reply to everyone they can, but it's not always going to happen. So don't freak out if you send something, or even 2 or 3 emails and don't get a response. Like I've had clients say that they finally got a response after the 5th email. So to multiple different coaches. So it's not just one particular coach. It's just, they get a lot, and so they do try and want to answer everything, but don't freak out. So I mentioned it earlier of you've got what you're looking for from a golf perspective, and then what you're looking for from a college experience perspective. And sometimes those don't match up. And so there's something that I, years ago maybe would not have recommended, but now is a great organization, Next Gen Golf. They run club golf. So pretty much every school either has one, or you could start one at the school that you're going to. If that school doesn't have a golf team that you really want to go to, and that is offering this program that you're really interested in, or you're just not at the golf level as the school that has all these programs that you're interested in studying, or maybe you want to go to a school that's got big time football and basketball games and Greek life and all that's not offered at some of your golf options. So I'd really consider looking at these. At the club golf route, Strixon and the PGA of America have pumped some money into it. It's a great very well-run organization by some guys who care a lot about golf and college golf. And it's not the same thing as being on a college golf team. Do not confuse the two. It's student-driven. You're not going to have real structured or assigned practices. It's a lot on your own. But you do get to play in 3 or 4 tournaments a year, or 3 or 4 tournaments per semester. And so it's an opportunity to continue to compete while playing golf. So there's that avenue. And then there's also looking at the PGM programs, which is professional golf management. It's at 17 different universities around the country. Kind of some schools in our area listed here. And this is a way where you learn how to become a club pro, and you graduate as a Class A club professional, and going out and trying to find a job that way. It is sometimes hard. Some schools don't allow you to do the PGM and play on the golf team just because there is a huge time commitment to the PGM program, especially in the summer when you need to do your internship hours and work at some golf courses. That doesn't lend as much time to playing as you might think. So just some other things to think about and consider. Again, thank you for your time today. My name's Todd Ohlmeyer. Here's my contact information. Again, I will be out at Horseshoe Bay all day on Sunday. Unfortunately, I can't be there on Monday, but I will be there on Sunday. Track me down, shoot me a text if you don't see me. Good luck this weekend at Slick Rock, and thanks again for your time.